it's a hospitality game. Is really what it is. It's not real estate. It's hospitality as far as the furnished rentals go.
There's always an opportunity. It's just how much you want to put into it and what angle, because it's always a good time to buy the right deal. But you just have to be involved in the process. So many people fail to understand, like, there's no free lunch. Welcome to the Cash Flow Bros. I have TJ and Prudence. Thanks so much for taking time. When we were trying to book this interview, it was interesting because you were like, we have a small window because we're about to head down to the beach to work on a midterm, short-term rental. And so, when we had met, it was actually, I have a lot of long-term, and I have one property that's really close to, it's my first rental. It's really close to downtown. And I had got a connection with, was it Blake? Yeah, it was Blake. You had to kind of help Blake out. And he was like, you gotta reach out to this guy. I think he can set you up with some furniture. Because that was kind of the barrier for me. I was like, it's a pretty big upfront investment. Do I have that cash flow right now? I know that ultimately this is going to be a perfect like midterm/short-term rental. But I don't know if I want to spend the upfront money, when the long-term's been working. And then you like hooked me up with a great price on some furniture from a closed down unit. And that's kind of what started my journey in midterm. And then I was talking to you. I initially had planned on doing short term, and you're like, hey, you should look at midterm because it's kind of the sweet spot of, a majority of the work is off your plate, but you still get the majority of the money. And so I kind of pivoted that, and I currently have had one tenant so far. So I haven't had a ton of turnover, but it's been really, really good so far. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much for
You're welcome.
Being a wealth of knowledge. I think I was pinging you several weeks after, like, how do I set this up? How do I do this? And then Prudence, you're kind of the mastermind of this thing. So we were talking, he's like, I don't know, Prudence like sets up all of the back end, and you're kind of checking levels and making, the numbers move up and down and all that kind of stuff. And so I just wanted to have you all in and talk about some midterm and short-term rentals, because the whole Airbnb game, I think, is very, very hot right now. But there's a lot of people who are doing it kind of amateur-like. Nothing against starting something new, but you guys do it at a whole new level. And so I want to kind of talk through that detail. So that was kind of a long intro. Sorry.
I appreciate it.
But I appreciate y'all being here. So what I wanted to start off with was, you have 27 units, correct? Some of them you own, some of them you manage for other people through your connections and different stuff. Where are those located? And kind of let's talk through just the reasons why you've pivoted on some of them. I know are now full-time midterm because of rules. Some are on by choice. So kind of where are the locations, and we'll kind of go from there.
You want to answer?
Sure. The majority of our places are in Auburn. And we started in Auburn with completely short-term rentals, and then the city of Auburn came down with restrictions for short-term rentals.
They changed the rules on you.
They changed the rules on us, which it was a good thing.
Yeah. How long were you running short terms before they changed that rule? Was it a long time, or was it like?
It was about a year.
Okay.
And their rules only affected one of our places. So
Gotcha.
We pivoted the place that it affected to 30 plus days or longer. And it's probably booked more than anything.
Wow.
So, yeah. And then we also have places in Birmingham as well. At the moment, most of them are in the South Side downtown area. Yeah. We do have one in Irondale.
Okay. Which Irondale put in restrictions too,
Irondale
right?
also
so it's
put
a
in
30
restrictions,
day.
so it's also a 30-day. And it's actually on the border of Irondale and Trustful. So we have Trustful utilities and Irondale rules.
You feel like you're bipolar as a property manager.
But it also stays booked. It also stays booked. So that we don't really have anywhere else in Birmingham. But I really would like to have some in unincorporated Jefferson County.
Okay, gotcha. Now talk to me through, was that kind of like red flags, emergency mode when those pivots and changes happen? Was it kind of a like freaky out moment as an investor, or were you kind of like, okay, we got to just pivot. We got to figure out. And you had previous data to kind of say like, oh, we think the 30 day will work, or were you like, oh, we got to exit? You know, like kind of what was your thought process when those rules started coming in place?
Well, my thought process was the city of Auburn is ticketing me and I'm having to pay a violation, and this is very aggravating. That was my initial thought process. And then we just looked at it and we're like, well, do we keep it or do we rent it for 30 days? And then we rented it for 30 days.
I moved back to Birmingham November 2019, and so my townhome was our first Airbnb.
Okay.
And when I bought it, it was like $130,000, and I was a house hack and got a roommate. And I knew if I ever leave Auburn, I'm going to short-term rent it. I want to put it on Airbnb. And so we got it on Airbnb January 2020, and we were like learning what we were doing as we were going, and we were picking up steam, and then COVID hit, and they canceled like 18 of our reservations.
Oh, wow. You're like, well, this is not going well.
So this was actually our first forced pivot. And what Airbnb did allow was for you to then book travel nurses. And so we shifted then to a travel nurse, and she stayed in it for the first few months of COVID. And we were like, this is much easier. There's a lot less management. Our occupancy stays high, and it paid the bills at that time. We still didn't know how to price a midterm rental, and we kind of learned that along the way. And then while she was in that first one, we picked up our second one on the same street. And COVID was actually beneficial to us because since I started living there on that street, I knew it was perfect because I had local knowledge, and we had a garage, backyard, less than a mile from campus, and I was looking for other properties to buy. And as soon as you saw a sign in the yard in that neighborhood, if you saw the sign, it was too late. It was already sold.
Yeah.
And so in that May, we picked up another one. The sign went up, but it was for sale by owner. The rain had washed off the phone number, so you couldn't get to it. So we traced the number. Ended up being an engineering buddy of mine, and so I was able to call them, and that's how we were able to pick up that unit.
Nice. Yeah, it is interesting in the popular areas of town. I mean, you really have to kind of know someone. I mean, we moved to Homewood, 8 years ago, and it's like you gotta like fight to be in Homewood. Like you gotta know someone. I mean, there's so many people. I will run into families, and I'm like, oh, how long you lived here? How'd you get here? And they're like, oh, we had a friend who had a friend who was selling their place, and we got in. Like it didn't even go to market. So that's interesting that you kind of had a friend from a previous connection to make that. So then basically that kind of introed you into midterm and kind of realizing like, hey, this might be a happy medium, because I don't think a lot of people talk about midterms as much.
They really don't.
Well, they do now. It's really becoming a hot topic now.
You guys have made it popular.
But yeah, it's definitely a more hot topic now than it was.
I think
because of cities levying restrictions.
Yes, gotcha.
Yeah, and I think what people usually think of like travel nurses, how many travel nurses could there possibly be to do midterm?
Right.
And what we found out doing midterm is that travel nurses are really like maybe 5 to 10% of who we service, and there's so many other groups of people. And whereas with short-term rental, it's really easy to get in a saturated market, like Avondale, Crestwood's one of them.
Yeah.
Auburn. And
I feel like
Destin.
East Lake's pretty saturated.
Yeah. But with midterms, what we're finding is most neighborhoods don't have enough midterm housing for the people who want to be there.
Right.
So it's been a really nice pivot.
Yeah, when we set up mine, and then I got it online, the first booking was from some welders that were working down in Bessemer, and they have like a 6-month contract, and they actually ended up, they booked for 2 weeks, did their stint, and we ended up not being able to rebook, but I'm sure they found someone, and have booked it for 6 months, and just kind of, they were 3 weeks on, and 1 week they go back home, but they wanted to keep the place because it's like all their clothes were there. They didn't want to pack up. They wanted, and so they're just like, let's just leave it. So they probably booked a place for 6 months.
I'm sure they did.
Yeah. Just welding away. So,
much better than a hotel room.
Yes. Yeah. And probably more economical, more comfortable. So talk me through, I know that you do a lot of the pricing and you kind of work on the platforms and you kind of know where to adjust it. There's apps that will kind of adjust automatically for you. what is your game plan? How much do you lean on the apps to help you, and then how much do you personally go in and say like, nope, I'm setting the price because I know XYZ is happening in Auburn, for example?
Well, I don't lean on the apps at all.
Okay, she's like, I'm a solo agent.
Well, so I follow an Airbnb guru, if you will, and I have since we started. But Airbnb Automated, his name is Sean Ruckajich.
Okay.
And he has done course after course on dynamic pricing and the importance of knowing your pricing and knowing when to adjust and being in there and adjusting all the time.
Right.
So I've taken a lot of his webinars and a lot of his courses because his content is really, really good.
Yeah.
And so that's what I do. I don't use Price Labs or Wheelhouse or any of those.
Right.
As we get bigger, I'm sure I will because I can't do it all.
Well, like you said, you're leveraging your knowledge, and
Right.
and then ultimately you're getting that extra margin, which probably helps your profitability.
Yeah.
So talk me through. I know you also mentioned that during game days you switch from like a 2-day rental to a minimum 4-day, and did it affect like bookings at all? Like I would think it would, but the smile says no.
Yeah, not in the SEC school and SEC football games. It really didn't affect it. And then going back to what we were just talking about, when you use the pricing softwares, they're lagging indicators because what they're looking for is other hosts to change it. So you're relying on other people to be doing their job, and then it catches up. So by the time those services catch up with the pricing, you're already behind because everybody's already changed their prices. Whereas,
and you could have already been booked up at the lower price.
Yeah, and so you wanna predict it, and the further out you are, kind of have a higher price, and then as you get closer, you kind of shorten that price, and then when you're right up on it, you back up and then you jack up your price again.
Gotcha.
And so pretty much every software is a lagging indicator.
Interesting.
But they are good to use if you don't know your city.
Mm-hmm.
And,
yes.
And if you don't know what's going on and what's happening in your city, they are good to use for those types of indicators because they will, why is this weekend, why are the rates raised for this weekend? If you don't know your city, then, that takes care of that for you.
There could be a music festival that's popping in.
Mm-hmm.
So talk me through then what's your process of staying on top of? Are you looking at events? Is that just something you have in your workflow to like check up on the city's kind of schedule or?
So yeah, I look at the events put out by the Chamber of Commerce. I'm also in different Facebook groups of what's happening in Auburn and what's happening in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And adjust accordingly there. With the midterm rentals, it doesn't affect it the same.
Right.
Because it's your fall rates may be higher monthly, but it's just for the whole month. It's not going to be this weekend or that weekend or
right.
But yeah, so I look at events, and then there are the events that repeat themselves every year.
Yeah.
As well.
Talk me through. Sorry, I'm just like firing. I'm like, this is. I say this a lot on the podcast. This is a selfish venture. So, I've never thought about the seasons because somewhat I think about beach rentals, right? Like
which are different. Yeah.
There's typical beach times, right? But outside of that, you guys are in cities. So what are typical busier times in what is probably not considered a vacation destination, but you're still booking stuff? And
so these are vacation rentals. I don't think of them as vacation rentals. They're furnished rentals.
Yeah.
Because it's not a beach. It's not football season. I guess be a vacation rental, but I totally forgot what you just asked me.
Well, just so like fall is more popular, or like in more of a city versus like beach, because beach probably has its own totally separate schedule that we're not going to speak to.
The least popular month is January.
Yes, it gets dead for real estate. Yeah.
So, other than that, it's a pretty good steady flow.
Yeah.
And then in Auburn, obviously football season is higher, and in Birmingham, August to October, November is a really good time as well.
August to October, November.
Yeah.
Did y'all see that the XFL and USFL just merged.
Not.
So the Stallions, the Birmingham Stallions, I think were in the USFL, and then you have the XFL, and now it's all becoming the UFL, the United Football League. So it is they're combining both. The Rock's behind it, so that's good. But I was curious with more, you basically almost, I'm not sure the exact numbers, but we'll say that you've doubled the teams, and so you double the cities involved. I think they've switched the schedule to a little bit more advantageous. It starts in March, and I felt like the Stallions were playing in the summer, which was like we went to one game and fried our butts off. Yeah. So we have not gone back. So I think it's a more opportune time, but I foresee that that's going to help a lot of like growth in 2 or 3 years. Where I think football is very popular. And it's going to help. But I was just curious as far as that and the other combinations of things happening downtown. Do you foresee the potential growth just continuing with your rentals?
I don't want the people coming to the game. I want the support staff that's here for the game.
Yeah, because they're going to be there longer.
Right.
Pre and post.
We housed a couple of whatever the football league is, the players. We house them and their families.
USFL players. So they're not all from Birmingham. They're professionals. They're trying to get their shot, trying to prove themselves on the ground, and so they can eventually get to the NFL. And they make a salary. So their season's only a couple months long, so they need short-term housing. So one midterm housing. And so we had an opportunity with one player and his wife were coming down and looking at some of our properties.
That's cool. That's very cool. I had actually one of my rentals. There was a coach for the Squadron, the Birmingham Squadron, which is our basketball team, and he was there for a 6-month contract, and he was there in a Airbnb, but it was looking like his contract would extend, and so he's like, I was just trying this out and trying to do the short term thing, but I think I want to bring my family here, so he's like, would you do a 6-month lease? And we ended up not working it out, but I do think there's a lot of people, especially with COVID opening up job opportunities and people wanting to work from, remote and have the opportunity to try a new city, jobs just in general, thinking more contractually than like, hey, let's get this person on to live here for years and all that kind of stuff. Like, hey, let's just bring someone in for 6 months or whatever. I think the world has opened up the opportunities for midterms significantly, and it sounds like your business model has proven that as well. So, all right, so let's dive into tips and tricks for the kind of things that you can't read about on a blog, like the stuff that you guys kind of have learned in your craft of creating an experience. Maybe even more specifically for these midterm rentals that you need or people are wanting versus like stuff that you can just find every day on a blog post, because you guys are boots on the ground. You're doing this every day. I'm sure you have a lot of knowledge there.
So much.
You're like, how long do you have?
Yeah. Tips and tricks. Well, you're managing, it's a hospitality game. Is really what it is. It's not real estate. It's hospitality as far as the furnished rentals go. And if you don't know hospitality, or if you don't know hospitality, you're not going to be as successful as you can be.
Yeah.
Just in general. And that's a big deal.
I think Prudence's superpower is her empathy, and so she's like, these people are coming here with a family. What do families need? They need like coloring books and places for the kids to relax and enjoy. They need to be able to cook and clean, live like they're at home. And so she does a really good job of making the places feel like they're at home. And one of the feedback we get from our guests very frequently is that Prudence thought of this and we didn't even know we needed it until we had it. And just figuring out what your ideal client is. And so she's really good at that for families. She thinks about their pets. We love pets in our units because people who travel with pets are usually the best pet owners. And then,
they really love their pets.
Yeah, and she also asks, what are you here for? And so if they're here working from home, she makes sure they have a desk. She makes sure sometimes we put an extra monitor there.
Okay. So will you pivot sorry to interrupt, but will you pivot the rental? Like you'll pre-ask some questions, be like, oh, well, we can adjust this rental. We'll add a home desk for you because you're working from home.
Yeah, like we don't have a pack and play in everyone, but we have a pack and play in Auburn and here. And so if we know they're going to have a small child or they're coming to visit a grandchild, we'll make sure our cleaner goes and drops off the pack and play we have for that unit and make sure we have a kids table and games and coloring books and things for the kids. If we know they have pets, we get fresh dog treats and make sure their water bowls are set out and the pet beds are set out.
Man, that's incredible. So you're really taking it to a whole nother level of inquiring, like, who are you?
Right.
And how can we best serve you?
Right.
And then I'm sure the reviews just go through the roof.
Yeah, they're really good reviews. And
she's like, humble brag.
well, no, they really are. I mean, we also have a handful of the others, and that's just how it is.
Yeah. There's people who just walk through life upset about everything.
They absolutely do. Yeah. And a lot of the owners I consult with or do work for but don't manage their rental, I like to check in with them from time to time. And one of the things that comes up is if they got a review that wasn't so stellar and they're really focused on it and they're really stressed, and they'll ask me, well, what do you think and what do I need to do? And some reviews absolutely warrant being removed, absolutely. But what I tell them every time is there anything in the review that you can learn from? And if you can, then learn from that. And if you can't, then let all the other really great reviews absorb it as they roll on over it, because we can't be focused on that.
I think there's some authenticity to it too. Mm-hmm. You know, like we all know that. I know I'm not perfect. I know it's hard to believe. But we know that we're human. Right. We know that we're not perfect. We know that even you go to a hotel experience, the hotels aren't perfect. Like mistakes happen. It's how you recover from them, how you try to address the situations. And I think when someone is scrolling through reviews and they see one bad one, they're like, oh, maybe things didn't go exactly like. But look at the 72 other times it went well. I think we're in good hands.
I will say if people reach out, and it's happened one or two times, and where they will reach out and ask about the one review out of 112 that wasn't whatever. And when they do that, I will answer them, and then I will let them know that our place is probably not a good fit for them. Yeah. Because if you went through 100 reviews and you picked this one out and you're going to message me,
this is not a good relationship.
It's not a good fit. It's not going to be a good fit. And that's okay. Like, because I don't want to be from a, restrictive type mindset. Like, I don't have to have all of the business.
You just have to have the good ones.
Exactly. Those are my expectations. I know the product we put out. Yeah. And we're going to do everything reasonable for you to have a comfortable stay.
Tim Ferriss's, his book and some of his content just centers around the 80-20 rule. And he really broke down, he was doing in sales, and he broke down like 20% of his, 80% of his business was coming from 20% of his customers. Right. But his time was going to the ones that were just like not giving him that much business. Yeah. And he just like cut it off basically. Right. And I think that's a lot of wisdom y'all have, and just realizing that you're not the best fit for everyone. No. Because ultimately those people probably aren't a good fit for anyone. That's right. They could go to a corporate hotel or something.
They can. Yeah. And that's okay.
Yeah. And we're good with it.
We're good with that. I think another tip or thing that I tell my owners that I work with too is communicate everything up front. Yeah. If you're coming into our house, to our property, to our place, to our home, whatever it is, and a blind is broken and I'm not able to get it fixed before you come in, if I tell you ahead of time so that you don't walk in and just see a broken blind and think, oh, this place is not taken care of. Yeah. It's amazing how okay people are with that because you've proactively communicated to them.
That's a really good, it's like, hey, this is broken and we can't get someone out till next week. Right. So sorry.
Yeah. This happened, or you're going to walk in and this is what you're going to see. This is not the normal. It just happened. Yeah. We're working on it. But to manage that expectation ahead of time is really, I think it lets the guests know that we respect them and we're on top of our stuff.
Yeah.
And, we're letting you know, and it will be handled, but it's not handled at this exact moment.
Yeah. That's great tip. Anything else? Let's just keep them rolling,
Where are we on tips?
tips and tricks. And,
So I'll just brag about some other systems Prudence has put in place. So we do some semi-automated stuff. So we use Hospitable as our channel manager. And so on the concierge side, we have she set up automated messages for check-in, check-out. We have a 24 hours after checkout, or maybe it's 12 hours after checkout message that says, hey, is everything going all right? And then on top of that, then she'll also send out some personalized messages. Hey, what are you guys in town for? So it doesn't feel all robotic, and you still get the feeling like you're talking to a person. And that's where she asks, what kind of snacks do you want? And we spend maybe $15, $20 per guest on just basic snacks and drinks. And
okay.
It pops up over and over and over again in our reviews. And we have so many people who come back and say that you just made us feel like we're at home. And there's just a large percentage of the population who has so much travel anxiety. And so she does a really good job making people feel like they're welcome and at home and safe in a safe area.
So it's basic snacks, but it's snacks that they wanted, that they asked for.
Is your cleaner just you're asking them to go do those?
So no, things? In the beginning, yes.
But now you got a snack person, right?
Now it is one of our cleaners, but I pay her separately to do snacks and handwrite notes and run errands. So she's a cleaner as well, and then I pay her separately to do those other things.
And then she runs to all of the units and does all these different things. That's smart. I think the big theme I'm hearing is just care. I think in life in general, if we just care, if we put that extra effort in, we separate ourselves from, I would say, 80 to 90% of the other businesses around, because they're just in the humdrum of turning it out versus just taking that extra 10 minutes and how can I craft this email to make this person, they may have lost someone. And you can say, hey, I'm so sorry about that. We're so grateful that we can host you. And then they're just like, oh my gosh, they see me. People want to be seen.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't take but an extra caring moment, 5 minutes on an email to make someone feel that way. So that's incredible.
Yeah. And if they tell you why they're in town or how long they're in town for, just after a few days, touching base and, how did the tournament go? How did the game go?
Yeah.
How was your daughter's graduation?
Yeah.
It's really less than 5 minutes, and it just lets them feel connected.
And it's also what you care about. So we're in some short-term rental some host groups, and we see these other hosts like, this person's doing this, what should I do? And they're worried about the wrong thing. They're worried about what the guest is going to do wrong, and we're worried about the guest's experience and how they feel when they're at our place. We're not worried about them pocketing extra dishwasher tablets or taking a roll of toilet paper. So we just have all the cleaning supplies and things out, and people are like, or some of these other hosts are like, why you trust your guests to not steal your things? Like, that's not what we care about. We care about that the guest has everything that they need while they're at our place to feel at home.
I like to operate with, if you stay at our place and you leave with all the dishwasher tabs, then you must really need to wash your dishes, because I don't want to.
We're blessing you.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to operate. I'm not going to operate from the other mindset, you know. And we don't have people steal our thing. And I think, because I don't. It's just not how I want to think and believe. So
and it's the law of attraction.
And as a family. Really when I go somewhere especially with all 4 kids, and we're there for a week, I need more than 2 dishwasher tablets. And we're
washing a lot of dishes,
but it's just a small thing. I think another thing that's just how we think in general in our personal lives. But I think another thing that plays into it is we have lots of furnished rentals, folks and hosts who just have one. It's different. It's different for them. They, it's mine. And I must monitor and watch cameras all day long when people are there, and just it's different. So.
I mean, I empathize with that, because our first rental was a long-term rental, but it was our house originally. And it took me about a year of like going over there and fixing things and things getting broken or wood floors getting scratched to like separate myself from like, okay, this is now an investment property.
Right.
Like this is a business. It's okay if it gets beat up because things are fixable and that's what the money's for. And like just separate. But at first it was like, oh my gosh, you scratched my wood floor. I'm big on wood floors. I like my wood floors nice. When my kids scratch my wood floor, I'm like, just go to your room. I need a minute. But all that to say was it took me a little while to separate so I can see that if you're like, oh, this was our vacation home and we're there half the time, but then on the other time we're renting it out, you do have this attachment where you may not be able to be as loose of like, no, we're blessing you. Things can get fixed. Like they're like, oh no, you know. So that's a good idea too to just separate yourself from the property and realize like it is a business. It's its own entity. It's things can get fixed if something breaks something. It's just a house,
right?
You know, and people are people, and we need to take care of people,
right? And people are people. Yeah. There's deliberate damage, and then there's just damage because it happens.
Yeah. So this is, by the way, fantastic. We could stay here for hours, but I do want to pivot. You all have a good amount of properties, you know, managing them, all that kind of stuff. Talk to me a little bit about some of the things you foresee in the future, pivots that could be happening on the Airbnb platforms. You know, I know it's a little speculative, but like you see trends, you've seen stuff that's happened in the past, kind of things that are happening in the future, obviously movements to midterm. Do you have any other perspective of like, hey, we're kind of thinking this might happen, we're preparing for it, or we're ready for these pivots to happen or anything like that?
I feel the Airbnb market is very saturated right now. Having said that, I could probably go and walk out and ask 10 people and half of them would not even know what Airbnb was. But I think it's saturated. But I think that, you know, in the next year or 6 months or 18 months, a lot of those will also fall to the wayside because you can't just put furniture in a house and then, you know, make a lot of money off of it. Like there's more to it than that.
Right.
When it first got started, you could do that. You know, here's a bed, here's a couch,
but now it's saturated, so now you have to be competitive.
Now you have to be competitive
and separate yourself out.
And
you got to go Prudence and TJ.
Yeah. So I think there's that.
Okay.
When I first stayed in Airbnb, it was very close to couch surfing. So it was like extra space people had in their house. And then when real estate investors got into it, they're like, oh, you can cash flow this and make it a business. And so now that it's converted to a business, you have a lot of people who are professionals and doing it. And then you have a lot of people who jumped in because they were attracted to the cash flow and not realizing how much of a undertaking it was. It's a whole separate business.
It's not passive. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a whole separate
very
business
active.
on top of it. Yeah. Especially if you only have one or two and you don't have the scale to hire people to do some of these other things. And in Airbnb, they changed their algorithm to encourage the way the Airbnb system's going. And so that's one thing that we keep up with from this Sean's program is he has algorithm updates and tells you how to keep up your listings in the top rankings. But one of the things that they've been doing lately is promoting individual rooms in bigger houses. And so treating a large house kind of like a small multifamily with each room as its own door. And we mentored this couple in they bought a house in Irondale. It's the biggest duplex I've ever seen. It's like 11-7.
Yeah, it is. It's crazy.
And they live in the 4-3 side, which is the small side, and the other side has 7 bedrooms. And over there, they rent 6 of the rooms by the room. And
30 days and longer.
30 days and longer. And they're like, they were skeptical, but they trust us. And so they tried it. And then now they have all 6 rooms booked. They're cash flowing or they're bringing in $4,500 a month just on that side.
Wow.
And their mortgage is $3,500 a month. So they're cash flowing $1,000, living for free. And all these people have a really nice place. It's on the Irondale Mountain Brook border.
They are living for free and cash flowing $1,000 a month.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
bonkers.
And
so is there just a commons, like there's 7 rooms, but there's
it's
a commons
it's a
area?
house. Yeah,
It's two common spaces.
Wow.
So you have the rooms, and then they share the living room and the kitchen and whatever. And most people keep to themselves anyway.
Yeah.
We have one place in Auburn that we rent by the room. The kitchen, they'll use the kitchen. But yeah, it has to be managed a little differently than your whole house or your whole apartment.
So there's individual locks in every door. In that house, they have a downstairs living area, and then the way it was laid out, there was one bedroom which you had to go through to get to the other bedroom. So they turned that one into another common area. They put a little kitchenette in there, another refrigerator, and so that's another upstairs common area.
Nice.
That they used up there.
That is wild. What a house hack. That's like house hacking on steroids.
And it gets around all the midterm or the short term
It's in
restrictions.
Irondale,
Yeah,
so-
it's in Irondale.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
really great. So you foresee that
rooms.
room by room is going to become a lot. Yeah.
Just the way the economy is at is people are looking for affordable housing. Extended stay hotels are super expensive. One Airbnb for one person is super expensive, and a lot of these people are working professionals, and they're gone.
They're not there.
They're
half
gone
the time.
8. Yeah, they're gone 8. They're gone
Yeah.
8 to 6. They come home. They want to chill and watch some Netflix in their room.
Yes.
Maybe order in. Maybe throw a pizza in the air fryer or whatever.
Yeah.
And then go back to their room.
Yeah. Some of them even have long shifts. I mean, longest shifts like 10, 12,
Yeah.
13 hours, and they're there to work for the time. Like
They work.
I
They
think
sleep,
about the storms.
and they go home on the weekends.
Yeah.
it's
We
really
have
what they
like
do,
when
yeah.
we have storms coming in and stuff
yeah.
like that. I mean, those guys and gals are working, 14, 15, 16 hour shifts. They bed down and then they go back at it. So that's really interesting. So room by room, any other trends or things that you foresee happening in the future?
I think Prudence mentioned it, but I think, a lot of people. So the overall growth for Airbnb in terms of people using it is going up, but a lot of people are saying Airbnb's dying, but there's all these hosts who jumped in thinking it was a quick buck,
Right.
and then they're going to fall out. And so, there's more opportunities to buy furniture from people shutting them down, even take over units, because a lot of people went and bought these when money was cheap in 2020 to 2022 and were like just use this money as extra income. But the only way they can make it work because they overpaid was to cash flow it as an Airbnb. And then
Right.
like, it's not an issue, so they're going to have to turn around and sell them. So opportunities to come and pick them up creatively or otherwise.
Yeah, and they're already set up that way,
already
and then
set
you
up.
go in like you guys were talking about, someone you're about to head down to the
Yeah.
beach, and you're just doing some updates, some pivots.
Yeah.
So you bring that extra care,
Yeah.
and then you're back up and running,
Yeah, and then-
doing what they weren't doing.
Right. Yeah. They were managing it. So we went down a month ago and consulted for them to basically say, how can this be better? And the biggest feedback was your market is very saturated and every listing looks exactly the same as does yours. And that they don't need to manage it because from talking to them, they didn't enjoy managing it. And it was like a dread and that comes across, if they're dreading to do it every day, don't do that. Hire it out to someone who, does it. That's part of what they do.
And another trend that reminds me of the saturated market is Airbnb's algorithm is promoting unique stays, and they actually use AI to look at your pictures and see if it looks all gray or all monochromatic and compares it to everything else in your market. And if it does, it's not going to promote you. So one of the things we're going to go do is add some accent walls and change the coloring and make it look a little bit different than all of the others, so it pops out to the eye, because that's what they've trained their AI to do.
It's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah, these subtle tips and all that kind of stuff is just, some of them are major tips, some are subtle, but they're all combining to really make yourself competitive in what is a saturated market. I think about it too, like sometimes people are like, it's a good time to buy. It's a good time to sell. It's like there's always an opportunity. It's just how much you want to put into it and what angle, because it's always a good time to buy the right deal.
Yeah.
Like in a horrible market, it's a good time to buy. In a good market, it's a good time to buy, but you just have to be involved in the process. So many people, I think, fail to understand, like, there's no free lunch. you know, like they hear this Airbnb thing, they're like, oh, this buddy's cash flowing and all this kind of stuff, but they still work. It's still effort. It's still hospitality. That's the best way I've heard it explained to me was, you know, long term, you're basically in the passive income business. Midterm to short term, you're in the hospitality business.
We're in the flexibility and the hospitality business.
Yeah. It's awesome. Well, I appreciate this so much. This has been a huge insight. If anybody wanted to reach out, they said, I'm struggling with my Airbnb. I want some consultation or I just want a conversation. How can people get a hold of y'all and kind of have that conversation?
Well, I don't know. How can people get a hold of us?
Reach out to you on Instagram.
No, so yeah, you can reach me on Instagram at Auburn Ninja.
Yeah.
And we just set up our website, 13rainbows.com. Okay. So our properties will be available there. We can do direct bookings, and then we'll have a consult link there if you want to do an Airbnb consult. So we can do remote consult. So people pay us just to do a Zoom and like a walkthrough, and then people also pay us to come stay in their unit and walk through and tell us exactly what they need. And then on top of that, they're like, okay, that's great. Now can you come and do it?
Yeah.
So a lot of
that's the best thing. You guys get paid to stay places. They're like, please come, and you're like, okay, we'll go to the beach for a day.
Figure it out.
Yeah. May struggle, suffer through it.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But yeah, our business is 13 rainbows because 13 is my favorite number, and I love rainbows, and that's as deep as that goes.
Hey, yeah, you're like, where's that come from? You're like, it is pretty straightforward.
It really is.
No,
I was filing
awesome.
the LLC paperwork, and I was like, what am I going to... This is what I'm calling it.
I love it. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you guys are a depth of knowledge. I feel like we could have honestly sat here for hours. And, you know, like I said, I'm kind of trying to merge into that world, trying to slowly learn myself because, you know, me pivoting on my rental was just in an effort to learn. So far has not panned out as much, which is fine. But yeah, because I foresee down the road finding some more vacation rentals. I did actually have one last question. I know that some of this is a scale thing. Having one is just as hard as having X. What is that X? Where you are kind of at a happy, like, if you're like, I'm going to get into Airbnb. Obviously, most people start with one, and that's fine. But you need to get to X scale, 2, 3, 10, to really start to effectively realize like your systems, you're taking advantage of the scale of things rather than you know overworking just to manage one Airbnb, because I'm assuming people kind of get burnt out when they have one, because you still have to have some systems in place, cleaners, all this kind of thing, and you could do that same for 10. What did you guys find early on was like, okay, we're catching a headwind with this thing?
You know, we probably didn't realize that till around 9 or 10. Yeah. But in hindsight, it would have probably been more like 5.
That's exactly what I was going to say.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. But there's also, it has to be 5 in the same area.
Exactly.
Like if I have 5 all over the United States, that's just one single one in 5 different places. Because you have to have teams of people. Yep. You know, you don't need 1 cleaner, you need 3. Because things will happen.
Yes. Yeah.
And you need people that you can trust to do the things.
Right.
And you need to not be afraid to let people go, like cleaners that don't work for, you know, like if you just keep butting heads or it's just not a fit for you, then find a different one. And a lot of people, cleaners are your like they're the heart and soul of what you're doing. And a lot of times it's hard to get one, and then hosts will be like, well, I don't want to lose them, but they're not showing up consistently on time, or you need to let them go. Yeah. And don't feel bad. You're doing what you need to do and move on.
For the business, yeah.
And I think it's tiered. So I think that's the first headwind is the 5 to 10. And then if you can get to like 20 to 25 in the same market, then you can hire your cleaners full-time by the hour. You can hire somebody to manage for you.
That's good.
So there's different levels for sure.
That's good.
We just talked about this week. I said, why don't I run an Airbnb cleaning concierge business? And I think that's what we're about to start doing.
Yeah. So we're going to do some wraparound services. So like the laundry is the biggest part of the turnover. And so now we want to get a Airbnb laundromat where we're servicing all the hosts. They can bring their laundry to us, and then their turnaround is now 30 minutes to an hour versus 4 hours because they're waiting on towels to dry.
Because cleaning for residential versus cleaning for furnished rentals is very different. So, and just all the little things like, we pay someone to make sure every week the trash is at the road and the can is brought back the next day. And things you don't realize are what you need to do to scale until you have more. Because that's a big deal.
Yeah, make sure the trash is empty. Yeah.
It's to the road and back. And I'm not going to ask the guests to do it.
Right.
Sometimes I do when they're like, is there anything I can do to help? Because they do love to help because you've made the connection with them.
Right.
And so I'm like, yeah, it's trash day.
Yeah. You might throw it up. But you're right. I mean, there's so many small little nuances, like I've built out a lot of for this podcast. I have people a team who helps me edit it and put out the clips and all these kinds of things. Well, it's a process.
It is.
And there's multiple Loom videos. There's multiple conversations and systems that we put in place of like this happens and now this happens. And that took time.
Yeah.
And now it's like you can do it for 5 or you can do it for 1 or you can do it for 20. But like you kind of have to do it for all of them.
Right.
And to be competitive, you have to have that level.
And just
of
because you
excellence.
can do all the things doesn't mean you personally need to do all the things. Hire people.
Yeah.
And then you also get to differentiate. So like you have a good cleaner, your impulse is to, hey, let me get them to check the consumables. Let me get them to check the levels of the hand soap and the shampoo and make sure there's toilet paper and all that. And then when you ask them to do more and more things, take the trash out, then the cleaning starts to get affected. So now we took one of our cleaners and we took her off. Now she's a backup cleaner, and her job is to go to every unit every week and make sure all the consumables are refilled. And then that way the cleaners can just focus on cleaning, and the overall product is better all around.
Because they're not they can kind of niche and focus and do what they do best and not have to worry about this and this and this.
And we're a
something
team.
gets missed.
Yeah, and we're a team.
They're a team. We're a team. They're on our team. We're together.
So she does spot checking for us because she was a cleaner, and then she reminds Prudence. We did this great gala.
She's like the cleaner Nazi,
Well, no, we did it. We did it in a fun
so
way.
they all work together.
Yeah. So we were both teachers, and Prudence was a Montessori teacher. So we did this fun thing where we wanted to appreciate them for the holidays, and so we got them all gifts. And then we had this in one of our complexes in Auburn where there's 5 units next to each other. So we had the event in one unit, and then next door we messed some things up with that the cleaners had to go check. And so we didn't tell them what it was, but we told them there's 15 things, and they had to go in and
figure out what wasn't right.
So it was a fun way to
fun.
to sharpen your skills and figure out what you're missing.
That's
and
awesome.
And so then whoever got the most right, we gave a door prize to, and they were all excited to share and play the game. And it wasn't like punitive. It was just like, these are things I can get better. And I know Prudence like these are my focus points, but she didn't tell them they were her focus points. They were just looking for them.
That's great, man.
Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, you guys have, like I said, such a depth of knowledge, so many different things you're doing to make excellence at the tier of what you all do, and it shows in what you're kind of doing with your businesses, and super excited to see what the future holds for you all. So I always say time is our most valuable
Absolutely.
asset, and so for y'all to sit down with me and all the people listening, to take your time, I really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having us on.
Yeah,
Been
this
great.
was awesome.
Thanks
This
for
was
the
awesome.
invite.
Yep, y'all have a great one.